Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Hammer. Today is Monday, July 7th, 2025. I, of course, am here to talk to you about what's going on in the markets, mortgage rates, and pricing. The only place on the web where we all get together and talk about what's going on at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time each weekday morning. Here, a few minutes late this morning. Sorry about that. Had a electrical contractor, someone from the electric company, come out, moving a pole and doing the wiring for the barn. So, he came early and you got to deal with them when they're here. So anyway, good morning, y'all. Great to have you here. Thank you for joining me. If you're watching the replay, go ahead and give me a hashtag replay in your comments. Let me know that you were here this morning. We're going to talk about what happened last week. We're just going to reiterate over that jobs data again, just briefly go over a couple of the holes that are poked in it and basically look at where we think rates are going to be this week ahead of next week's big report, which will be the CPI inflation data. That's going to come out on the 15th. The 15th is on Tuesday. So we'll see where that goes and what's going on. So good morning, all of my fine live friends. Great to have you here. Remember, if you want a text message that I'm going live, like went out a couple minutes ago, you can sign up for that at hmmr.io/reminder or use this cool QR code over here. Also, appreciate all of you being here. Let's go ahead and jump in since I'm running behind anyway, and we'll get right to the good stuff. So if we take a look this morning, mortgage bonds are down about 8 basis points to start the day. Nothing to get overly excited about. Let me start Presentify. It's not a... There we go. Okay. So nothing to get overly excited about, but also nothing to get too worried about. 8 basis points. We were up a couple of bips to start the morning, and then they kind of lost ground. We're going to keep an eye on this 10-year Treasury yield, 4.37. We were down. Look at this. We were down to 4.24 on Tuesday, July 1st. So Monday, June 30th, we were at 4.23. So there's been a big jump in that 10-year Treasury yield, and most of it happened here on Friday. In fact, let me zoom in on this and we'll kind of go through that together. Hold on, let me refresh the page and we'll go over this. So taking a look here, you can see that we were at our lowest on that Tuesday and we crept up, and by Thursday we had the big jump. And again, we had a very odd week with the holiday. We had Thursday, we had the jobs data come out because of the holiday and being closed. Markets closed 2 p.m. Eastern time and closed on Friday. So if we take a look here, look at this green line. That's a technical. It would have been a technical support level at 4.35. The 10-year did close at 4.35 on Friday. This morning, it's trapped slightly above it. We hope to see it drop back below there. It's at 4.37. So we've got the 50-day, which is the red line, and the 25-day blue line moving average right here at about 4.37, 4.38. So the 10-year does have some technical support here, and as well as this 100-day moving average green line now acting as a technical resistance level from breaking through. What this story tells us is that it's unlikely that we see bonds make big moves unless we see any kind of data. Now, this morning, there is absolutely no economic data today. It is a slow, quiet day post-holiday. We've got everything still continuing to go ahead and kind of tread water again. Mortgage bonds are down about 7 basis points. I was talking about locking anything closing near term on Friday or on Thursday when we didn't get favorable jobs data. And I would probably be in that way. I think this week we're going to see things drift lower. Right now, it's anybody's call, though. There's really no reason to expect too much either way. We've got some tariff stuff going on. Of course, the Texas thing, and our hearts going out to all those people going through what we did here in Western North Carolina, unexpected flooding. We've seen firsthand just how brutal this kind of thing can be, and unfortunately the tragic stories that go along with that. So, but basically, there is more tariff talk, and tariffs are gonna focus on the headlines. Right now, there's talk of what they call the BRICS countries, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and these, they're the ones that are trying to kind of build a consensus against the U.S. dollar and and some stuff there. So tariff circus fails to move investors. That you can see that headline right here, and that's kind of the main gist of it. Is we've got tariff hangover. So the tariffs have been going on since February. It's July. I'm sorry, since April. It's July. And, we've got 3 months of this at this point. So, Trump's pushed something out for a week and the deadline and the whatever. And it talks about over in the bond market, treasuries outperforming all rivals this year, even with Thursday's sell-off on the stronger than expected jobs report. Since Trump's Liberation Day sent markets into a tailspin in April, stocks have weathered events, including conflict in the Middle East and the ongoing tariff threat. A recent tech rally, stronger than forecast U.S. employment. Again, let's go into that jobs data. The big thing on the jobs data was that all of that data is really kind of false. So this is Danielle DiMartino Booth. This is a paid commentary, and she just really kind of gets into the details of how the many workers out there are becoming aware of how hard it is to find a job, and are a lot more. There's 9 million, a record 9 million people that are multiple jobs, meaning they have a primary and a part-time job, a secondary job, trying to make ends meet or get ahead. So this is, we've seen that this is happening, and that behind the scenes, there's a lot of this. Also, recession-proof industries such as the government, healthcare, they're the ones that when we see the jobs that were created, they were created in those industry. So there's a lot of argument that this jobs data wasn't as strong. So Ron says tariff revenue has increased our U.S. revenue by 109 billion, yet we still have no inflation. You know what? Again, I would love to argue the no inflation thing, because I've seen prices go up. So we may not see it in the reports, but we definitely see it in the real world. And as far as that, the CPI, this month's CPI, Ron's, basically got it dialed in, is next week on the 15th, when we get that CPI. If we don't see a lot of convincing inflation, we'll see a bigger call about Fed rate cuts. Now, the Fed does meet at the end of July 30th. You can see right now, I'll put this to current. Right now, there is basically zero expectation that we're going to see a rate cut in July. Remember, that was really what we were floating into that jobs data last week looking for. When we look at where it had been before that, just a week ago, there was a 20% expectation. You can see it right here. There was a 20% expectation that we would get a job or a Fed rate cut in the July meeting. And then after the jobs data, that washed all the way down to 5%, probably even less than that. So the bigger expectation now is the September cut. And here again, in September, before that jobs data a week ago, there was a 5% expectation that we would not see a cut. So it was just an outlier. And now that's all the way up to 30%. So there is, a lot of talk that we may not get a rate cut even in September. So that will change depending on what we see with the CPI inflation data. Now, if next week's inflation data does show inflation, then you're going to see this move even higher, and chances of a cut in this column will move even lower. So similar to where we were a month ago, you can see there was much less expectation of a rate cut a month ago. It was a much higher expectation that we would see rates stay the same. And that's kind of what we'll see happen. So this is where mortgage rates are going to drift this week. There's really not a lot going on. We got the FOMC meeting minutes on Wednesday. I don't think that we're really going to get too much movement on that. We generally don't. We're watching this 10-year treasury yield right now. Again, we're at 4.37. We want to watch if it pushes back up. If it pushes back up into the 4.4s, that's a bad sign. As far as lock stuff, let me throw it on here. Generally, we're looking at, anything that's 15 days or less. You probably want to lock for protection. We just don't have a clear path to improve. The 15th is a week away. There's really, if that does show inflation, it's going to make things even worse. We're probably going to see rate sheets creep a little worse over that time. So taking a look here, we would have loved to have seen, 6.75 when we were back up at 7. These are solid rates. It's not as low as it was, but it's still much better than where we have generally been in the 6.89, 6.98 area. When you use Mortgage News Daily as a reference point, tracking them, the high 6.8s, low 6.9s, and this is still a great rate. So, anything's closing near term. Loans that have more time have less to worry about as usual. And that's why I would be floating them. We want to see the next two events. We've got July 15th will be that inflation data. July 30th will be the Fed meeting. And we'll see some talk about what's going on there. So anyway, that's what we got going on for this week. To start the day, today's reprice risk is moderate. Bonds are free to drift. Right now, they're down about 8 basis points. If we were going to see reprices, it'll be when this hits, basically minus 18, minus 20. When we see an increase of 10 to 12 basis points, then you'll see some reprices worse. Otherwise, lenders should be pretty calm today. Watching the same thing in that 10-year Treasury yield here. So there's no economic data today. There's no big headlines other than just the more tariff stuff. Trump setting August 1st start for tariffs ahead of Wednesday deadline. But everybody knows his MO. Markets know his MO. Another question was, what about the passage of the big bloated bill? That has not affected markets. It was already priced in. Once it got through the House, it was just a matter of time that it went through the Senate, and nobody was expecting Elon Musk to be able to rally enough support to crush the bill or gut the bill. So markets have already priced in the extra debt that it's going to take to pay for it. And, again, all of this stuff is smoke and mirrors. I love how it's like between now and 2034 and everything's always pushed out 10 years. But again, things change and that changes the whole course. It's just like shooting a bullet. You could be off by half an inch here, but 100 yards away, that's going to be 3 feet. So, when they put things that far in advance, it doesn't really there. So stocks are going to continue to hold and grow. We don't see anything that's changing there. And with bonds, there's no reason to expect that we're going to see rates really drop significantly. It's just, there's nothing that's in the cards for that to happen right now. That's why I would be locking anything that's closing the next couple of weeks, just because we're at that sweet spot. We've seen improvement, 6.75. If you locked in at the absolute best time ahead of the jobs data, congratulations. We talked about some risk to that, but loans that didn't lock in there that have time, we'll get back here. This is not something we haven't seen before and we won't see again, especially if we do see that inflation data come in less than expected, less of an increase. If the tariffs don't show that they're making a big change in that inflation data next week, we'll see things improve some more as we head into that Fed meeting and that press conference, and there'll be talk about a September rate cut and things like that. So we'll see some time there. All right, everybody, again, sorry for being late this morning. Apologize for that. Thanks for showing up and sticking around. And, we'll same bat time, same bat channel tomorrow. Actually, the right bat channel, right bat time. Hey, don't press that button. I wasn't ready yet. So, all right, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.